I thought I was doing the right thing. That's what they tell you, isn't it? Speak up, report wrongdoing, be the whistleblower. But on Friday evening, I was escorted out of the building like a criminal, my career supposedly in ruins. They didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment. They didn't know about the recordings, the documents, the journalist waiting for my call. By Monday morning, while I sipped coffee at a downtown cafe, her empire crumbled on live television. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting justice. My name is Amanda Blake, and until 3 days ago, I was a senior compliance officer at Silverline Capital, one of those gleaming financial giants that dominate the Hawthorne, Illinois skyline. 32 years old, Harvard law graduate, and naive enough to believe that doing the right thing actually mattered in corporate America. I'd spent 5 years climbing the ladder, working 60-hour weeks, missing birthdays and holidays, all for a seat at a table where integrity was just another word in the employee handbook nobody read. Silverline Capital managed over $40 billion in assets, mostly pension funds and retirement portfolios for middle-class Americans who trusted us with their futures. The building itself was a monument to corporate excess, 42 floors of glass and steel, with executive suites that cost more to furnish than most people earned in a decade. I worked on the 38th floor, in the legal and compliance department, where we were supposedly the guardians of ethical business practice. What a joke that turned out to be. My direct supervisor was Cynthia Ward, 45 years old and sharp as a surgical blade. She'd been with the company for 15 years, surviving 3 CEOs and countless reorganizations through a combination of political savvy and ruthless efficiency. Cynthia dressed in designer suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent, wore her platinum blonde hair in a severe bob that never moved, and had perfected the art of the corporate smile, the kind that never reached her cold gray eyes. She collected protégés like trophies, mentoring young women just long enough to claim credit for their success before moving on to the next rising star. I'd actually admired her once. In my first year, she'd taken me under her wing, teaching me how to navigate the boys' club mentality that still dominated high finance. She showed me which battles to fight and which to concede, how to phrase objections so they sounded like agreements, how to survive in a world where being right mattered less than being politically astute. Amanda, she told me over martinis at the Union Club, talent will get you in the door, but knowing whose hands to shake and whose backs to stab, that's what gets you the corner office. The thing about Hawthorne is that it's big enough to hide corruption, but small enough that everyone knows everyone else's business. The financial district was its own ecosystem, a 10-block radius where deals were made over bourbon at the Millennium Club and careers were destroyed via anonymous tips to the Tribune's business section. We all played the game, pretending we were different from Wall Street while engaging in the same backdoor dealings and ethical compromises. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, a 40-minute commute on the L that gave me time to transform from Amanda the person into Amanda the corporate warrior. Every morning, I'd put on my armor, a rotation of 5 dark suits, sensible heels that wouldn't slow me down in the marble corridors, and a mask of professional detachment that had become harder to remove each night. My neighbors thought I was successful. My parents back in Ohio bragged about their daughter who'd made it big in the city. They didn't know that success in this world meant slowly selling pieces of your soul until there was nothing left but an employee ID badge and a 401k. The irony wasn't lost on me that I worked in compliance, ensuring that everyone followed rules that seemed to apply to everyone except those who made them. We were the internal police, the ones who were supposed to catch wrongdoing before it became a scandal. But when the wrongdoing came from the top, when it wore our money and controlled your performance reviews, what exactly were you supposed to do? That's the world I inhabited until last week, when everything changed. When I stumbled upon something that would force me to choose between my career and my conscience, between playing the game and blowing the whistle, between being Cynthia Ward's next success story and becoming her biggest threat. It started with a discrepancy so small that anyone else might have overlooked it. A rounding error in the quarterly report for the Midwest Teachers Pension Fund, off by just $2.3 million in a portfolio worth $800 million, sirs. But I'd built my reputation on catching the details others missed. And something about this particular error made my instincts flare. The number had been adjusted 3 times in the internal drafts, each revision moving it further from the original calculation. Late Tuesday night, alone in my office with only the city lights for company, I pulled the source documents. What I found made my blood run cold. The fund had suffered a catastrophic loss, nearly $47 million, from a series of high-risk derivatives trades that Cynthia had personally authorized. But in the reports prepared for the pension board, that loss had been buried across 17 different line items, disguised as market adjustments and rebalancing costs. The fund trustees, mostly retired teachers who trusted us implicitly, would never spot it. I spent the next 2 days digging deeper, and the scope of the deception only grew. This wasn't a one-time cover-up. Over the past 18 months, Cynthia had been systematically hiding losses across multiple pension funds, using new investor money to paper over the gaps. A classic Ponzi structure dressed up in sophisticated financial language. The total exposure was approaching $200 million. Real people's retirements, their entire life savings, were evaporating while Cynthia collected her 7-figure bonuses for exceptional portfolio performance. My first instinct was to follow protocol. Thursday morning, I scheduled a meeting with HR, bringing copies of the relevant documents. The HR director, Patricia Morse, listened with that practice-neutral expression they must teach in corporate training. She took notes, nodded at appropriate intervals, and assured me the matter would be investigated thoroughly. But as I left her office, I saw her pick up her phone. And I just knew, she was calling Cynthia. That afternoon, I tried the compliance hotline, the anonymous system supposedly designed to protect whistleblowers. I spent 40 minutes detailing my findings to a voice that sounded bored and distant. They gave me a case number and promised to follow up within 5 business days. 5 business days while millions more disappeared. By Thursday evening, Cynthia knew. She summoned me to her corner office, the one with the panoramic view of the Hawthorne River. She was standing by the window when I entered, her silhouette sharp against the setting sun. "Amanda," she said without turning around, "you've always been one of my brightest. But brightness without wisdom is just glare. The pension funds are performing within acceptable parameters." She turned then, and her smile was arctic. "Market volatility requires flexible reporting. You understand flexibility, don't you?" "I understand fraud," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "Those teachers in Milwaukee, the firefighters in Springfield, they're counting on that money." She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume, something French and suffocating. "Do you know what happens to people who mistake complexity for conspiracy? They find themselves very alone, very quickly, no references, no recommendations, no future in finance." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. I'd hate to see such a promising career end over a misunderstanding. "It's not a misunderstanding. It's theft." Her laugh was like breaking glass. "Theft? No. Amanda. Theft is what happens when someone takes something that doesn't belong to them. Like confidential files. Like privileged information. Like a job at a company where they've worn out their welcome. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you." She returned to her desk, dismissing me with a wave. "Take the weekend, think about your future. Consider whether you want to be a team player or a cautionary tale. Because if you persist with this delusion, I promise you'll discover just how high the voltage runs in those power lines you're so eager to touch." I left her office with shaking hands but a crystallizing resolve. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed, protecting those at the top while crushing anyone who threatened their comfortable arrangement. That night, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, emails, authorization documents, trading records, 3 USB drives, 2 cloud backups, and a hard copy hidden in a safety deposit box. If I was going to war with Cynthia Ward, I needed ammunition. The internal battle was excruciating. Every fiber of my middle-class, Midwestern upbringing screamed at me to keep quiet, to preserve my career. to avoid making waves. But then I'd think about those teachers, probably my parents' age, checking their pension statements, trusting that their modest retirement dreams were safe with us. The choice became clear. I could be complicit in their betrayal, or I could fight back and face the consequences. I made my decision. Friday morning, I would bypass Cynthia entirely and go straight to the board of directors. Friday morning arrived gray and oppressive, matching my mood as I entered the Silverline building for what I didn't yet know would be the last time. I'd spent the previous night preparing a comprehensive report, 23 pages of evidence, meticulously documented and cross-referenced. Each fraudulent transaction traced, each cover-up exposed. I'd even included Cynthia's email authorizations, her digital signature on every illegal trade. At 9:15 a.m., I bypassed Cynthia's office entirely and went straight to the executive floor. The 42nd floor was a different world. Hushed carpets, original artwork, and an executive assistant who looked at me like I'd tracked mud into a cathedral. I handed her the sealed envelope addressed to Richard Brennan, the CEO, and the board of directors, marked Urgent Regulatory Violation Report. I need to ensure this is delivered immediately, I said. It's time-sensitive compliance matter. She nodded, impressed by the official language. I watched her disappear into the CEO's office suite with my report. Then I returned to my desk and waited. The response came faster than I expected. At 11:47 a.m., my phone rang. Not my desk phone, my personal cell, which meant they'd already frozen my corporate accounts. Security would be coming soon. Conference room A, immediately. Cynthia's voice was controlled fury. The walk to the conference room felt like a funeral march. My colleagues avoided eye contact, somehow already aware that I'd become radioactive. The corporate jungle drums had been beating, and everyone knew to distance themselves from the condemned. Conference room A was packed. Cynthia sat at the head of the table, flanked by two senior partners I recognized but had never spoken to. The head of HR was there, along with two security guards standing by the door. Not the friendly lobby guys who knew everyone's name, but the serious ones they brought in for terminations. Most surprisingly, Richard Brennan himself was present, his face unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Ms. Blake," Brennan began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd crushed hundreds of careers. "We've reviewed your allegations. What we found is deeply disturbing." For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe they'd actually listened. Maybe. Your unauthorized access to confidential files, your attempt to manipulate data to create a false narrative, and your blatant violation of your confidentiality agreements, these are serious breaches of corporate policy and potentially criminal acts. The room spun. What? No, the evidence clearly shows. The evidence, Cynthia interrupted, her voice silk over steel, shows a disgruntled employee who, after receiving a poor performance review, attempted to fabricate a scandal to damage the company's reputation. Performance review? I've never had anything but excellent. She slid a document across the table. My signature was at the bottom, but I'd never seen the contents before. According to this fabricated review, I'd been underperforming for months, missing deadlines, making errors in compliance reports. The date was from 2 weeks ago, somehow predating my discovery of the fraud. "That's not real," I said, my voice breaking. "You forged this." "These are serious accusations, Ms. Blake," one of the senior partners said. "Defamation on top of your other violations. You're lucky we're not pressing criminal charges. We're prepared to offer you a severance package." HR chimed in, sliding another document forward. 1 month's pay, conditional on your signing this NDA and returning all company property immediately. I looked at the NDA. It was comprehensive. I couldn't speak about Silverline, its employees, or any alleged activities to anyone, ever. The penalty for violation was $5 million. "And if I don't sign?" "Then you leave with nothing," Cynthia said, unable to hide her satisfaction. "No severance, no reference, and we'll be forced to note in your file that you were terminated for cause, including potential criminal misconduct." Good luck finding another job in finance. I looked around the room at their faces, some satisfied, some uncomfortable, but all complicit. Even Brennan, who I'd hoped might have some integrity, was clearly in on it. They'd probably promised him plausible deniability when the fraud eventually surfaced. "You're stealing from retirees," I said quietly. "Teachers, firefighters, nurses, how do you sleep at night?" "We sleep comfortably," Cynthia replied, "knowing we're maximizing shareholder value within complex market conditions. Not that you'll be discussing our proprietary strategies with anyone." I stood up, leaving the NDA unsigned on the table. "I'll need time to review this with my attorney." "You have until 5 p.m., Brennan said. "After that, the offer is withdrawn, and we'll pursue all available legal remedies." The security guard stepped forward. "We'll escort you to your desk," one said, his hand hovering near my elbow but not quite touching. They were well trained in avoiding assault charges. The walk through the office was excruciating. Everyone was watching but pretending not to. The way people stare at accident scenes. My desk had already been packed, my personal items thrown carelessly into a cardboard box. They gave me 5 minutes to check for anything they'd missed while one guard noted every item I touched. As we reached the lobby, Cynthia appeared, having taken the executive elevator to beat us down. She wanted the last word. "I warned you about those power lines, Amanda. Some currents are too strong for little birds." I looked her straight in the eye. "This isn't over." She laughed, that same breaking glass sound. "Oh, but it is. By Monday, you'll be nobody." A cautionary tale told at happy hours. The girl who thought she could fight the system and got cremated by it. The guards escorted me through the revolving doors and onto the sidewalk. It was 2:24 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and my career at Silverline Capital was over. But as I stood there, holding my pathetic box of possessions while downtown Hawthorne bustled around me, I felt my phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Heard you might have a story. Marcus Hale, my old college friend who'd become an investigative journalist. Somehow, he'd already heard about my termination. In this city, news traveled fast. I looked back at the Silverline building, at Cynthia watching me from the lobby with a victorious smile. She thought she'd won. She thought Monday would arrive with her still on top and me destroyed. She had no idea what I'd been recording for the past 3 months. That Friday night found me in my apartment, surrounded by empty wine bottles and scattered documents. The city lights blurring through tears I refused to acknowledge. The humiliation kept replaying in my mind. The security guards, the stares, Cynthia's triumphant smile. I'd poured myself a third glass of Malbec when my phone rang. Marcus Hale. "Amanda, I heard about Silverline. Are you okay?" "How did you—" I started, then laughed bitterly. "Of course, bad news travels at light speed in this town. Can we meet tonight?" I looked at my reflection in the dark window, disheveled hair, smeared mascara, the ghost of a corporate warrior. "I look like hell." "Perfect. O'Sullivan's in 30 minutes. Come as you are." O'Sullivan's was a dive bar far from the financial district, the kind of place where journalists and whistleblowers could talk without running into corporate spies. Marcus was already there, nursing a beer in a corner booth, looking exactly as he had in college, rumpled Oxford shirt, 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes that missed nothing. "Jesus, Amanda, you look like you've been through a war." "I have." I slid into the booth, signaling the bartender for whatever Marcus was drinking. "And I lost." "Maybe not. Tell me everything." For the next hour, I laid it all out. The pension fund fraud, the cover-up, Cynthia's threats, the kangaroo court that afternoon. Marcus took notes on a napkin, old school, nothing digital that could be hacked or subpoenaed. 200 million in pension funds. He whistled low. "That's front-page material, but I need proof. Documents, emails, something concrete." I smiled for the first time in days. "I have everything. 3 months of evidence on multiple drives." 3 months? You've been collecting this for 3 months? I pulled out my phone, opening an encrypted app, Better than that, Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings. Every meeting with Cynthia, every threat, every admission, I have it all. Marcus's eyes widened. Including today? Especially today. Her saying they're maximizing shareholder value within complex market conditions while discussing stolen pension funds? That's admission of knowledge. Her threatening me about power lines? That's witness intimidation. Play me something. I selected a file from 6 weeks ago. Cynthia's voice filled the space between us. The teachers' union doesn't have the sophistication to understand derivative strategies. As long as the quarterly statements show growth, they're happy. We just need to ensure the numbers tell the right story, regardless of the underlying reality. Marcus nearly choked on his beer. She actually said that? That's nothing. I have her instructing the trading desk to hide losses, discussing how to manipulate regulatory filings, even joking about how stupid pension fund trustees are. This is Pulitzer material. Amanda. But we need to be strategic. Silverline has a legal team that could bury us both. We need corroboration. Maybe another source inside. No. I cut him off. We go nuclear. This weekend. Before they can mobilize their full damage control. Amanda, we should be careful. Careful? I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to me. I was careful. I followed protocols. I trusted the system. And they destroyed me in a conference room while making jokes about it. Cynthia thinks I'm going to crawl away and disappear. She thinks Monday will arrive with business, as usual. I pulled out a second phone. A burner I'd bought months ago, when I started suspecting I'd need protection. I've been in touch with the State Attorney General's office. They have a task force investigating financial crimes. I haven't sent them anything yet. Wanted to try internal channels first. But now they get everything. That's the nuclear option. Once you do that, there's no going back. Good. I want her to wake up Monday morning thinking she's won, check her phone, and watch her world implode. I took a long drink, feeling the plan crystallize. Here's what we do. You write the story this weekend, but embargo it until Monday morning. I'll leak the recordings to social media Sunday night, create enough buzz that your editor can't ignore it. And at 9 a.m. Monday, right when markets open, the AG's office gets everything. Marcus studied me, this new version of Amanda Blake who'd emerged from corporate crucifixion. You've thought this through. For 3 months, I've been preparing for this possibility. I knew Cynthia would never let me expose her willingly. Every recording, every backup, every encrypted file, it was all insurance for this moment. What about the NDA, the threats? What are they going to do, sue me? While they're under federal investigation for pension fraud? While their executives are doing perp walks? I smiled, and it felt predatory. Besides, I never signed anything. And whistleblower protections override NDAs in cases of criminal activity? Marcus raised his beer. To revenge served at market open. To justice, I corrected, clinking my glass against his. Revenge is just the garnish. We spent the next 3 hours going through the evidence, organizing the most damaging pieces for maximum impact. Marcus would need the weekend to fact-check, to verify with his editors, to prepare the story that would run with Monday's edition. The Hawthorne Tribune had been struggling for relevance against digital media. This story would put them back on the map. You know she'll try to spin this, Marcus warned as we prepared to leave. Claim you're a disgruntled employee, that you're lying. Let her try. I have her voice on tape admitting to everything. I have documents with her signature. I have a trail of evidence so clear a first-year law student could prosecute it. I stood, steady despite the wine. She taught me well, actually. Know whose backs to stab, she said. I just don't think she expected it to be hers. Outside the bar, the Chicago wind cut through my jacket. Marcus offered to share a cab, but I wanted to walk, to feel the city around me one last time as Amanda Blake, disgraced compliance officer. Come Monday, I'd be something else entirely, the woman who brought down Cynthia Ward. Amanda, Marcus called after me. Are you sure about this? Once this starts, it's going to be a feeding frenzy. Your life will never be the same. I thought about my empty apartment, my dead career, my principles that had cost me everything. Then I thought about Cynthia, probably at the Union Club right now, toasting my destruction with champagne. My life ended at 2:24 p.m. today, I said. Monday morning, I returned the favor. Saturday morning arrived with a hangover and 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. Word was spreading through Hawthorne's financial district like wildfire. I ignored them all, focusing instead on Marcus's updates. He'd been working through the night, his editor now fully on board after hearing the recordings. Amanda, this is bigger than we thought. Marcus texted at 10 a.m. My source at the SEC says they've been watching Silverline for months. Your evidence might be the missing piece. By noon, my LinkedIn had exploded. Former colleagues who'd avoided eye contact yesterday were suddenly sending messages of support, carefully worded to maintain plausible deniability. The hypocrisy was nauseating, but mixed among them were other messages, from employees at rival firms, from compliance officers who'd faced similar situations, from journalists smelling blood in the water. Then Cynthia started calling. The first call came at 2 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was controlled but tight. Amanda, we should discuss your severance package. The offer remains open. Call me. The second came an hour later, less controlled. I know what you're thinking. This won't end well for you. The financial world is smaller than you realize. By evening, the mask had slipped completely. You stupid little bitch. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I have connections you can't imagine. Pick up the phone. I forwarded each voicemail to Marcus and the AG's office. Evidence of intimidation, delivered directly to my phone. The financial district's underground network was buzzing. I received a text from Janet Morrison, Cynthia's former assistant who'd quit abruptly last year. She did the same thing at her previous firm, got away with it, thank you for being brave enough. Another from Robert Tang, a trader who'd been fired after questioning suspicious transactions. I have documents from 2019, similar pattern? Want them? The army of Cynthia's victims was emerging from the shadows, emboldened by the smell of her blood in the water. I connected them all with Marcus, building a pattern of behavior that spanned years. Saturday night. Cynthia switched tactics. A text from an unknown number. $500,000. Cash. Untraceable. You disappear, and this all goes away. I screenshot it, adding it to the evidence pile. Then I responded, your bribe has been forwarded to the authorities. Thank you for the additional federal charge. 20 minutes later, my apartment building's doorman called. Ms. Blake, there's a woman here demanding to see you. Should I send her up? No. Call the police if she doesn't leave. Through my window, I could see a black town car idling outside. Cynthia was panicking, making mistakes. Every desperate move added another nail to her coffin. Marcus called at midnight. Stories locked, front page, above the fold. My editor wants to run it online at 6 a.m. Print edition hits stands at 7. The headline is, Silverline Executive Orchestrated $200 million Pension Fraud. Whistleblower Reveals. What about corroboration? 3 former employees went on record. The documents you provided check out. Our legal team says we're bulletproof. Plus, that recording of her offering you a bribe tonight. That's going in the online edition. I opened my laptop, looking at the anonymous whistleblower portal I discovered months ago. A network of financial industry professionals sharing information about corporate crimes. My finger hovered over the upload button. 47 files, 238 pages of documents, 16 hours of recordings. Marcus, what if she runs? What if she gets on a plane tonight? My contact at the FBI says they're already watching her. Apparently, the AG's office shared your preliminary information. They're building a task force for Monday morning. Through my window, I watched Hawthorne sleep, unaware of the earthquake about to hit its financial district. Somewhere out there, Cynthia was probably in her Gold Coast penthouse, making frantic calls, moving money, maybe destroying evidence. But it was too late. The recordings were backed up in 5 different locations. The documents had been verified. The journalism machine was in motion. My phone buzzed with another text from Cynthia. Name your price. I thought about responding, then decided silence was more terrifying. Let her spend the night wondering what I was planning, what deals I was making, which authorities I was talking to. Let her feel what I'd felt yesterday, the helplessness of watching your world collapse while everyone else just watched. I poured myself a wine, not to drown sorrows this time, but to toast the turning tide. The city lights looked different now, less like a prison of glass and steel, more like a stage set for Cynthia's final act. Another text from Marcus. My source at Tribune says the SEC is planning a raid Monday morning. They want to freeze assets before market open. I smiled, imagining Cynthia's Monday morning, waking up thinking she'd survived the weekend, checking her phone to find her picture on the front page, her assets frozen, her office swarming with federal agents. The same conference room where she'd humiliated me would become her interrogation room. The town car was still outside. I walked to my window, making sure I was visible, and raised my wine glass in a mock toast. The car's engine started, and it pulled away into the night. Cynthia had given up on intimidation, probably moving on to damage control. But there was no controlling this damage. My phone rang, an unknown number with a DC area code. Ms. Blake, this is Special Agent David Harrison with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We've been reviewing the materials you provided to the Attorney General. Can you come to our Chicago field office tomorrow? We'd like to discuss witness protection options. Witness protection? Is that necessary? Given the scale of the fraud and the individuals involved, we want to ensure your safety through the trial. We've seen the threats Ms. Ward has made. We take them seriously. The reality hit me then. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about to become a federal case, with trials, testimonies, and years of legal proceedings. But looking at the town car's retreating taillights, I felt no fear, only cold satisfaction. Agent Harrison, I'll be there. But I need to be somewhere Monday morning. There's something I need to see. We can arrange that. Ms. Blake, what you're doing takes courage. The pension holders whose retirements you're protecting, they'll never know your name, but you're a hero to them. Hero? I didn't feel like one. I felt like someone who'd been pushed too far and decided to push back with everything I had. But if that made me a hero to retired teachers and firefighters, I'd take it. The Saturday night stretched ahead. Cynthia out there somewhere, frantically trying to salvage her empire while I sat in my modest apartment, calm in the knowledge that Monday would bring her judgment day. The hunter had become the hunted, and she was running out of places to hide. Sunday arrived with deceptive calm. I met with Agent Harrison at the FBI field office, a nondescript building that could have been anything from the outside. Inside, it was all business. Secure rooms, recording equipment, and agents who'd seen enough financial crimes to fill a library. The recordings you made are admissible, Harrison confirmed. Illinois law saved you there. We've had our forensic accountants review the documents. This goes deeper than even you realized. There's evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and RICO violations. By afternoon, I was back in my apartment, watching the clock tick toward evening. Marcus had called 3 times with updates. The story was ready, loaded into the Tribune system like a bullet in a chamber. At 6 p.m., I opened the anonymous whistleblower portal and uploaded everything. The digital flood began. Within an hour, financial Twitter exploded. The documents spread like wildfire, tagged with Wanja's Silverline scandal and pension theft. Financial bloggers who worked through weekends were dissecting the evidence, finding patterns I'd missed. Someone had created a spreadsheet tracking every fraudulent transaction, crowdsourcing the investigation in real time. At 8 p.m., my burner phone rang. Marcus, breathless. Amanda, Cynthia's trying to get an injunction to stop the story. Her lawyers are at a judge's house right now. Let them try. Truth is an absolute defense against libel. There's more. Someone leaked that the FBI is involved. CNBC just tweeted they're preparing a special report for Market Open. I walked to my window, looking out at the Sunday night calm before the storm. Tomorrow, those streets would be swarming with reporters, federal agents, and rubberneckers watching a titan fall. At 10 p.m., the first recording hit social media. Not from me, someone else had it, probably from the AG's office or FBI. It was the worst one. Cynthia laughing about stupid teachers who can't read a balance sheet. The audio went viral within minutes. Stupid teachers began trending, with actual teachers posting their graduate degrees and asking if they were smart enough to understand theft. Cynthia's final attempt came at 11:47 p.m. Not a call or text, but an email from her personal attorney. Ms. Blake, our client is prepared to offer a substantial settlement to resolve all matters privately. This offer includes $2 million immediate payment, a letter of recommendation for future employment, and mutual non-disclosure agreements. This offer expires at midnight. I forwarded it to Agent Harrison with a single word: no. At midnight, I opened a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for a special occasion. The apartment was dark except for my laptop screen, showing the Tribune's website. The story would go live in 6 hours. In 7 hours, markets would open. In 8 hours, federal agents would storm Silverline Capitol. I thought about calling my parents, warning them about what was coming, but decided against it. Let them wake up to their daughter as a hero, not spend the night worrying. Instead, I pulled out the recording device I'd carried for 3 months, the one that had captured everything. Such a small thing to bring down an empire. I found the file from my first day working for Cynthia, 5 years ago. Her voice, younger and less cynical. Amanda, you're going to do great things here. Just remember, in finance, it's not about right or wrong, it's about winning or losing. Then I played the last recording from Friday's termination meeting. By Monday, you'll be nobody. The irony was perfect. By Monday, I would indeed be nobody. No job, no career in finance, no future in the world I'd trained for. But Cynthia would be less than nobody. She'd be a cautionary tale. A federal inmate number. A Wikipedia entry about corporate corruption. My phone lit up with notifications as midnight passed into Monday. The Asian markets were opening, and somehow, word had spread internationally. Silverline's overseas partners were pulling out preemptively. The company's stock, which traded on international exchanges, was beginning its death spiral before the sun even rose on Hawthorne. I stood at my window, champagne in hand, watching the city sleep its last innocent hours. Somewhere out there, Cynthia was probably awake too, watching the same darkness, knowing that dawn would bring her destruction. I wondered if she was still making calls, still fighting, or if she'd accepted her fate. A text from an unknown number. But I recognized the tone. Richard Brennan, the CEO. You've destroyed hundreds of jobs, innocent employees who had nothing to do with this. I hope you're satisfied. I responded. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose theft over integrity. The innocent employees will find better companies. The guilty ones will find courtrooms. Another text. This one from a blocked number that could only be Cynthia. You think you've won, but you've just painted a target on your back. The financial world has a long memory. I didn't respond. Let her have the last word in our personal exchange. Tomorrow, the federal prosecutors would have the last word that mattered. At 3 a.m., I finally tried to sleep, but adrenaline kept me wired. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the teachers whose retirements I'd saved, even if they'd never know it. Thinking about the compliance officers who might feel empowered to speak up. Thinking about Cynthia, probably doing the same thing in her penthouse, but with very different thoughts. At 5 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. The Tribune's online edition had dropped early. The headline screamed across my screen, Cynthia's corporate photo beside it. The story was perfect. Marcus had woven together the evidence, the recordings, the pattern of corruption into a narrative that even financial novices could understand. The retired teachers weren't statistics. They had names, stories, dreams, deferred by Cynthia's greed. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan. It was 5:47 a.m. on Monday morning, In 2 hours, Cynthia's empire would officially fall. But looking at my phone, at the story spreading across every financial news outlet, at the FBI preparing their raid, I knew the truth. It had already fallen. The moment she'd decided to steal from those pension funds, she'd started a countdown to this morning. The city began to wake up, commuters emerging onto streets that would soon be full of news vans and federal vehicles. I raised my coffee mug toward the Silver Line building, visible in the distance, its glass reflecting the rising sun like a funeral pyre. "Happy Monday, Cynthia," I whispered to the morning air. "I hope you enjoyed your weekend." Monday morning exploded across Hawthorne's financial district like a perfectly timed detonation. At 6 a.m., the Tribune's story was everywhere: push notifications, morning news broadcasts, and the homepage of every financial website. At 7 a.m., CNBC went live from outside Silverline Capitol, their reporter breathlessly detailing the alleged fraud while the building loomed behind her like a glass tombstone. At 7:30 a.m., I sat in a small cafe 2 blocks from Silverline, FBI agent Harrison beside me for protection. Through the window, we could see the circus beginning, news vans arriving, reporters setting up shots, curious onlookers gathering behind police barriers that hadn't been there an hour ago. "They're moving in at 8, Harrison said quietly. Simultaneous raids on the office and her residence. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Former colleagues sending shocked messages, reporters begging for interviews, my parents calling frantically after seeing the news. I ignored them all, focused on the screen showing CNBC's live coverage. At 7:45 a.m., the first domino fell. Richard Brennan, the CEO, appeared on screen via video link, announcing his immediate resignation to focus on personal matters. The board had thrown him overboard to save themselves, but it was too late. The ship was already sinking. At 7:55 a.m., a black SUV convoy pulled up to Silverline's entrance. Federal agents and FBI windbreakers poured out, moving with practiced precision through the revolving doors I'd been escorted out of just 3 days ago. Employees arriving for work were turned away, their confused faces captured by dozens of cameras. "Your friend at the Tribune did good work," Harrison said, showing me his phone. The story had been picked up internationally: London, Tokyo, Frankfurt all running with it. Silverline's stock had been suspended from trading, but its bonds were crashing on secondary markets. At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang with a Chicago number. "Marcus." "Amanda, are you watching? They just walked Cynthia's assistant out in handcuffs. She's cooperating, apparently had her own recordings." Through the cafe window, I could see employees being evacuated from the building, some crying, others on phones with what were probably lawyers. These were the innocents Brennan had mentioned, the collateral damage. I felt a pang of sympathy. But it passed. They'd chosen to work at Silverline, chosen to ignore the signs, chosen comfort over conscience. At 8:30 a.m., the moment arrived. Even from 2 blocks away, the crowd's energy shifted. Cameras swung toward the building entrance. Through the sea of bodies and lenses, I saw her. Cynthia Ward, who just Friday had worn designer suits and commanded conference rooms, emerged in handcuffs. Her platinum bob was disheveled, her face pale without its usual armor of makeup. She wore yoga clothes. They must have arrested her at home, not given her time to put on her corporate costume. The federal agents flanked her, protecting her from the screaming reporters as much as preventing escape. "Ms. Ward, did you steal from pension funds? Cynthia, what do you say to the teachers whose retirements you destroyed? Will you be cooperating with authorities?" She kept her head down. But just before they put her in the FBI vehicle, she looked up. For a moment, through the chaos and distance, I swear our eyes met. In that instant, I saw it all: rage, defeat, disbelief that her empire could fall so fast. Then she was gone. Disappeared into the black SUV that would take her to federal booking. The cafe's TV was tuned to CNN now. The anchor was interviewing a retired teacher from Milwaukee, one of the pension fund victims. The elderly woman was crying, grateful that someone had finally exposed the truth, that there was hope of recovering her money. They split-screened her with the footage of Cynthia being arrested. The contrast devastating, the victim's dignity against the perpetrator's downfall. The Attorney General is holding a press conference at noon, Harrison told me. They want you there, if you're willing, behind the scenes, not on camera, but they want the prosecutors to meet their star witness. Star witness. From compliance officer to unemployed whistleblower to star witness in 3 days. At 9 a.m., markets officially opened, without Silverline stock to track. The financial channels focused on the ripple effects. Other financial firms with pension fund management were down 3 to 5%. Guilt by association. Regulators announced emergency audits across the industry. The phrase, the Silverline scandal, was already being used, like it was Watergate or Enron. My phone rang. Janet Morrison, Cynthia's former assistant. Amanda, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been carrying guilt for 2 years about what I saw and didn't report. You did what I was too scared to do. What happens to her now? I asked Harrison after hanging up. Federal custody until arraignment, probably this afternoon. Given the amount involved in flight risk, bail will be astronomical if granted at all. Then months of investigation, grand jury, trial. She's looking at 20 to 30 years if convicted on all counts. 20 to 30 years. Cynthia was 45. She might die in prison. At 10 a.m., more arrests. The head of trading, the CFO, 2 senior executives who'd signed off on the fraudulent reports. The FBI was casting a wide net, using the evidence I'd provided to map the entire conspiracy. Each arrest was captured on camera, creating a perp walk montage that would play on repeat all day. The cafe was filling up with refugees from Silverline, junior employees with nowhere to go. Their key cards deactivated, their careers in limbo. Some recognized me, shooting glances of recognition, resentment, maybe even respect. I was the meteor that had ended their corporate world. At 11 a.m., Marcus arrived, exhausted but exhilarated. The Tribune's website has crashed 3 times from traffic. This is the biggest story we've broken in a decade. My editor wants to submit it for a Pulitzer. He showed me his phone. The story had been updated with the morning's arrests, creating a comprehensive narrative of corruption and justice. There was even a sidebar about me, the whistleblower who brought down a giant, though it didn't use my name at my request. At 11:30 a.m., Harrison stood. We should head to the federal building. The AG wants to brief you before the press conference. As we left the cafe, I took one last look at the Silverline building. Federal agents were still carrying out boxes of evidence. The entire building, now a crime scene. The logo that had once seemed so prestigious, that I'd been proud to have on my business card, now looked like a tombstone marking the death of an empire. Walking through the financial district, I saw the story everywhere, on phone screens, newspaper stands, TV broadcasts in every restaurant and bar. Cynthia's arrest photo was already becoming iconic. The image that would define corporate corruption for this generation. Any regrets? Harrison asked as we waited for a light. I thought about my destroyed career, my uncertain future, the years of legal proceedings ahead. Then I thought about Cynthia in a federal holding cell, stripped of everything she'd stolen and schemed to build. No, I said, meaning it. No regrets at all. The light changed, and we walked toward the federal building where prosecutors were preparing to announce the case that would reshape corporate accountability. Behind us, news helicopters circled the Silverline building like vultures over a carcass. The morning sun climbed higher, indifferent to the human drama below, marking the hours of Cynthia Ward's first day as a federal defendant. It was 11:45 a.m. on Monday morning. Cynthia's career wasn't just over. It had been publicly executed on live television, and I had been holding the remote control. The Attorney General's press conference was a victory lap disguised as a solemn announcement. I watched from a secure room as she detailed the charges: wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, RICO violations. Each count carried decades in prison. When reporters asked about the whistleblower, she simply said, "A brave individual chose integrity over personal gain. Their actions saved hundreds of millions in retirement funds." By 2 p.m., I was free to go, walking out of the federal building into a different world than I'd entered. The financial district had returned to its usual rhythm, but everything felt different. The towers of glass and steel no longer impressed me. They looked like expensive cages. I found myself walking without destination, my feet carrying me through familiar streets that felt foreign now. The Union Club, where Cynthia had held court, looked smaller. The Silver Line building, still wrapped in crime scene tape, had lost its intimidating presence. These monuments to corporate power were just buildings, filled with people making choices, some good, most compromised, a few genuinely evil. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. Saw the news. Proud of you, sweetheart. You did the right thing. The right thing. 3 days ago, doing the right thing had cost me everything. Today, it had given me something I hadn't expected. Freedom. Not just from Silverline, but from the entire suffocating world of corporate finance. From the person I'd been pretending to be in those dark suits and sensible heels. I ended up at the lakefront, sitting on a bench watching Lake Michigan stretch toward the horizon. The water was calm, indifferent to the human drama that had unfolded in the city behind it. A news alert popped up on my phone. Silverline Capital files for emergency bankruptcy protection. The company that had seemed invincible on Friday was dead by Monday afternoon. Marcus found me there an hour later, bringing coffee and a tablet showing the latest updates. Cynthia was denied bail, he said. Prosecutor argued she had offshore accounts, flight risk. She'll be in federal custody until trial. I tried to summon satisfaction, triumph, something. But all I felt was empty. The anger that had fueled me through the weekend had burned out, leaving only exhaustion. What now? Marcus asked. I don't know. The FBI says the trial won't start for at least a year. They'll need me to testify. But until then, I shrugged. I'm unemployable in finance. My name might not be public, but everyone knows. I'm the whistleblower who brought down Silverline. Is that such a bad thing? I thought about it, watching a sailboat glide across the lake. Maybe not. Maybe it's exactly what I needed to become. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I stood to leave. The city lights were beginning to twinkle on, Hawthorne preparing for another night of deals and drinks and corporate conspiracies. But I was done with that world, walking home. I passed a newsstand where the evening edition of the Tribune sat in stacks. Cynthia's arrest photo dominated the front page under the headline, Empire's End. I bought a copy. Not out of pride, but as proof that sometimes, just sometimes, David really does beat Goliath. My apartment felt different when I returned, not like a refuge from corporate battle, but like a starting point for something new. The box of office supplies from my Silverline desk sat in the corner, untouched since Friday. I threw it all in the trash. That life was over. At 9 p.m., the news showed Cynthia's perp walk again, the 20th time that day. But now they had additional footage, her luxury penthouse being searched, boxes of evidence being removed, her Bentley being impounded. The empire she'd built on stolen dreams was being dismantled piece by piece. A text from Agent Harrison. You should know, we've recovered approximately $180 million so far. It's going back to the pension funds. Those teachers and firefighters will get most of their money back, thanks to you. Thanks to me, I'd lost a career but saved hundreds of retirements. It wasn't the trade I'd planned to make, but it was one I could live with. I opened my laptop and began writing, not a report or compliance memo, but my story. The real story of what happens when you stand up to power. When you choose conscience over comfort. When you decide that some things matter more than a 6-figure salary and a corner office view. Outside my window, Hawthorne glittered in the darkness, unaware that one of its titans had fallen. That justice had actually won for once. Tomorrow, the city would move on. Forget. Find new scandals to consume. But tonight, in this moment, the good guys had won. I thought about Cynthia in her federal cell, stripped of her designer suits and platinum power. She'd warned me about touching power lines, about currents too strong for little birds. She was right about one thing. The current was strong, strong enough to destroy everything I'd built. But she was wrong about the rest. I wasn't a little bird. I was the storm that brought down her empire. And while she sat in a cell contemplating decades of imprisonment, I sat in my modest apartment, free in ways she'd never understand. The last time I saw her, she'd promised that by Monday, I'd be nobody. In a way, she was right. Amanda Blake, the compliance officer who followed rules and trusted the system, was gone. In her place was someone harder, clearer, unafraid of power because I'd seen how fragile it really was. I raised a glass of wine to the window, to the city, to the FBI agents still processing evidence, to the journalists still writing updates, to the pension holders sleeping peacefully, not knowing how close they'd come to losing everything. Friday, they thought I'd lost, I said to the empty room. Monday, her career was over. The wine tasted like victory, like justice, like the end of one story and the beginning of another. Tomorrow, I'd start figuring out what came next. But tonight, I sat in the darkness, watching the city lights, knowing that somewhere in federal custody, Cynthia Ward was learning what it felt like to lose everything. And that was enough. More than enough. It was perfect. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed this tale of standing up to power and fighting for what's right, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on Amanda's journey. What would you have done in her position? Let me know in the comments.